Hi, my name is Hannah Prince. I grew up in Coal City, West Virginia, and I graduated from Independence High School. My brother Josh, he also went to Independence High School. He played basketball there. He loved to fish. He loved to hunt, and he grew up in the same house that I did. Same parents. Grew up with my brother Caleb and I, and he started working in the mines with my dad, and everybody would just come up to my dad and say, your son's just such a hard worker. He just gets things, instantly. He's so young, but, he just really excelled at what he did. And we were all just really proud of him, everything, that he did. And Josh's battle with addiction began after that he had an accident in the mines. He got hurt his back, and so he went to a doctor and was prescribed painkillers, and that's really where his addiction sparked from. He grew up, hearing the DARE program, say no to peer pressure and, drug dealers, but there really wasn't, a warning about, doctors, who wore white coats, prescribed, something to him that, and he just trusted the doctor because, it's what you were taught to do. And I can remember him saying, I don't have a problem, the doctor prescribed this to me, I have a prescription, so really, if the doctor gave it to me, I can't have a problem. And watching what happened to him as he, took those painkillers, it was almost like watching a loved one fade from, cancer or Alzheimer's. He slowly lost parts of himself, he never would have put our family in danger. He wouldn't have stolen. And I just watched as we slowly lost him to addiction. And it was a 4-year battle that my parents went through. Different times of the night, his friends would call and say, we don't know where Josh is, and they would go out looking for him. It was hard to tell who he came in contact with or what he came in contact with. And, it was just so easy how the enemy came in through, a door, because he is a roaring lion. He's seeking who he can devour. He's crafty. He came in a way that, we really weren't, taught to be aware of. He went to jail because he was on his way to work and drove a family of 4 off the road in their minivan, and then he was pursued by a cop, and he resisted arrest, but he wasn't even aware of it because he was under the influence while he was driving. And he called my parents, to let them know that he had been pulled over for insurance or something like that. He wasn't even aware that he had sped away from a cop, and my parents made the decision to let him go to jail because they knew that could save his life. The enemy was after him, and he was already addicted, and they knew that getting him away from the people that he was around could possibly save his life. So they made that decision, and I'm not a mom yet, but I can't imagine what it would be like to have to make that decision, to say that your son is safer in jail rather than, being out So they allowed him to go to jail, and they even went as far as filing a peace bond against him to where he could leave jail as long as he went into rehab. But he either had to be in rehab or jail. And he called and he said, I'll go to Brian Safe House. So for about 2 months, he was in Brian Safe House, went through withdrawals, had, fought, and he had kind of made up his mind that he was ready to come out, that, he'd already went through it, and he had already fought it, and that he was ready to come out. So he called my parents to say, come get me, I'm ready to come home. And he was leaving whether they stopped him or not, so they called the police because he was in contempt of court. And so back to jail he went. So my parents not only had to make that choice once to keep Josh in jail, but twice, because they knew that he couldn't come out and be around the people that he was around. And he was in jail until a friend bailed him out. And for a couple months, we had Josh back with us, and it was like he was, free from it. He had battled, and he went through it, and it was my 16th birthday in April when it started back, and we started noticing that different tools from my dad's garage were missing. He had broken into my mom's jewelry cabinet and had sold off, the first piece of jewelry that my dad had ever bought for her, and she found it in the pawn shop while she was looking for my dad's tools. And we started noticing that the spoons from our house were disappearing, and my mom confronted him, and said, if it's back, you can tell me. And he just kind of refused to admit that he needed help and that he was battling. And I remember a derecho hit the area and the power went out, and so for a week he was at our house while the power was out. And I can remember just being so angry with him, because he'd almost showed us time and time again that the addiction was more important than us. Had stolen, had lied, had even brought, somebody who we knew was involved in drugs to our house. And then it became the question of, my parents had to decide, it's keeping Josh around, keeping Hannah and Caleb safe. They almost had to choose between their kids in order to protect us. And I know that wasn't Josh, but I remember just being so angry with him and why he, continued to go down the path, and that he just couldn't even see. And during the time that he was sober, my mom would tell him things, and he would say, "Mom, I don't remember them. I don't even remember doing that or saying that." So I know that he was, under the influence of addiction. And it was so difficult to watch him, on the couch while the power was out. When it came time that he needed his next fix, he would sit there and he would dig at his skin and he would rock back and forth. Because he needed the next fix. His body was literally crying out for the drugs, and it was almost as if he needed it at that point. It wasn't a question of choosing. He truly believed that he needed it. And I remember it was July 18th. I was on the phone with a friend, and my parents had gone out yet again to look for Josh because, they'd been looking for him for several days and couldn't find him. And so they were gone several hours, and I knew that they were gone for too long and that something was wrong. So I got off the phone with my friend and I started calling my mom. I just remember praying, and my uncle, he came to get Caleb and I at our house, and all he said was, I need you guys to come with me. And he drove us to Josh's apartment in Sophia, and he had overdosed. And my dad and my cousin were the ones to find him. And my mom had been fighting, to build a case against him because he was breaking his parole. He had left the state. He had stolen, and she had proof. She was just begging, anybody who would listen, that he needed to go back to jail. And there was an officer who had actually gone to his house the Monday before and knocked on the door, and he said he heard the TV, but nobody was there, and we found him on that Wednesday. And I just remember, getting to Sophia on Main Street, and I saw the ambulance, and I thought, oh, Josh is in there. They must have caught the overdose in time, but my mom was actually the one in the ambulance because she had fainted. And my brother was pronounced dead as soon as they got there. And I remember the first thing that my mom told me was not to be angry at God. And I knew that she was right, but I didn't understand because I prayed and prayed. I was angry. I didn't understand, why it had to happen, and, why I didn't do something about it. And I remember shortly after, a couple months later, a couple friends, my youth group invited me to go to a church service down in Eccles. And I can just remember just being so fed up and just so angry because the guy who was kind of over the service, he had fought and won against addiction, and I didn't even want to go because I just couldn't get over how unfair it was that he was still here and my brother wasn't. And I remember that I went, but I was just so angry as I sat there and I listened to Jared worship, and I still was thinking, this is so unfair, God. Like, why didn't you do something? And I just remember thinking, that God didn't do this. It wasn't God who took my brother. That we don't fight with the flesh, but we fight with things in the spirit. There's principalities of darkness that the enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy. So I just started just really repenting. I got down on my knees, and I just remember crying out to God because I was just so sorry for being mad at him. I remember feeling arms wrapping around me, and it was so comforting that I turned around to see if somebody was there, but nobody was there. So I got on my face, and I began to turn that anger that was at God towards where it needed to be, towards the enemy. And I remember getting on my face, and I said, don't you know who I am? You've messed with the wrong girl. You've messed with the wrong family. I'm a daughter of the Most High King. I'm a chosen generation, royal priesthood. You've messed with the wrong girl. And I just remember drawing a line in the sand. I was crying out for my other brother Caleb because, with Josh's death, it had really rocked us as a family, and it just began to say, enemy, you might think that you've won this battle, but I already know the end to this story. You're defeated. You have been, you forever will be defeated, and it's time that you go back to where you belong. And I think that's what needs to happen. We need to, instead of saying that it's so sad, that addiction has just wreaked havoc on the state, which it has, instead of saying, oh, it's devastating, it's sad, that we remember that yes, the enemy is crafty. He is out to destroy our destiny. He's angry. He knows that God has plans for us. But even though we need to know who our enemy is, we need to know who our enemy is up against. It's not just us. It's God in us. It's the strength that God gives us. And he's continuing to wage wars on our behalf. He's continuing to battle for us. And we need to walk in that victory, because addiction was taken to the cross. When Jesus went to the cross, he took sin, he took sickness, he took addiction, and he said that it was finished. And he meant it. So it is finished. The enemy is defeated. He has been, he will be. And addiction, this darkness that's over our state, that's over our cities, it's going to fall. Because God is victorious. And we are heirs to the throne. We are a chosen generation. We are a royal priesthood. And we know where our strength comes from.